Hi everyone, this is Rick. You're watching Rick Chat RC. Thanks for tuning in, and have I got a presentation for you. Before we start, welcome to my RC channel, and today I've prepared something for you all and I hope you like it. The following is an FPV information presentation. Now this is something I've been working on behind the scenes and I'm finally looking forward to sharing it with you. It's good, relevant, unbiased information designed to help you get through. Stand by, here we go, sit back and relax and enjoy the following presentation. I'm going to start off with the following slide, an inconvenient truth. What I'm saying here is simple. Don't buy a quad or get into FPV until you read this. Don't believe me? Well, you can make and take and do whatever you want with this information. You can treat it however you want, but this comes from experience and I'm just giving you the lowdown the way I see it. This is the best advice I can give you to help save you money, to help save you heartache, to save you from pain and anguish, and to help you enjoy the hobby and not jump out of it quicker than you started. So starting out, what's the best way to start out with this hobby? As far as I'm concerned, after what I've been through, and I'm sure a lot of other people are going through this, I'm saying quite simply, start off with a whoop. A tiny whoop. There's plenty of them out there now. They're very small, lightweight, and they cause minimal injury or damage. In fact, I think they're so small and lightweight that they would hardly cause any injury or damage. Ensure the propellers are surrounded by rings or blade protectors. Now, from what I've seen, most of these whoops or tiny whoops, they all come with propeller shrouds or propeller rings. So I think you're all covered in that regard. Next, I think you need to start off with only 1S or 2S as the power plant. I'm saying here preferably 1S. Even 2S might be a little bit more powerful than you need when you're first starting out. Now the reason I say this also is because of the following. The 1S batteries are just more cheaper and more affordable when it comes to purchasing extra batteries. And with the average 3-minute flight time on these things, trust me, one battery isn't enough, 2 or 3 batteries isn't enough. You're going to want to get more batteries, and it's much more affordable to buy 1S batteries without hurting the wallet. Now before we go on, I think it's important to include this following slide, which I've titled as a word of caution. This may not be the bleeding obvious to some, but I have to mention it. FPV is not visual line of sight. So don't confuse the two. They're two entirely separate categories. It's very different from all your other current flying experience, if you have some. Now, if you haven't flown before, don't get wrapped up in the hype. It's not what you think until you become competent. Now, I think a lot of people fall into this trap. They see a quad they like, and they buy it, and they fly it, and it comes down quicker than it stays up, and next thing you know, you're in the shed or you're in the workshop repairing and you're not out there flying, which is what you should be doing. Yes, it's exciting. Yes, it's immersive, but hey, I've got to tell you now, it can also be dangerous, especially if you're a newbie and especially if you're starting out. So learn to crawl before you walk. You've heard the old saying. As far as I'm concerned, you've got to start with a tiny whoop. Now these range anywhere from $100 to $200. Sometimes they can be a little bit more, sometimes they can be a little bit less. This can include plus or minus a controller. You must also start flying by visual line of sight. Start in horizon or stable mode and progress to acro. Don't even think about putting a headset on as your first step. This is part of your training and journey when learning to fly. If you don't follow this, I'm telling you now, you will be disappointed. Know your craft. Like I said in the previous slide, do not jump straight into FPV with a headset on your face. You must confidently be able to fly circuits, by observing your quad first and foremost. Get to understand your quad. Remember, responsible flying is safer flying. So you need to know how it performs, how it turns, you need to know how it banks, how it rolls, how it climbs, what its punch rate is, and you need to know how it falls also. You need to see this. Trust me, you will crash. So you need to minimize that risk by applying what I've just said. Injury to property, yourself and or others, will spoil the whole experience. You need to spend more time in the air with confidence, not in the workshop with more repairs. Forget the hype. It'll just cost you money. Beginner quads, not really beginner quads. Now what the heck do I mean by that? Well, the best beginner quad has to be a trainer. You move up to the next level. You don't start there. As far as I'm personally concerned, $99 bills are not beginner quads. Value for money has nothing to do with it. Now you know what I mean. I'm sure you've seen those vids on YouTube. Cheap or cheaper quads are not necessarily beginner quads. The eSheen Wizard X220 is not a beginner quad, and so on and so on and so on. I've got the eSheen Wizard X220. Trust me, it's not a beginner's quad. I've already done a previous video or two on the crash repair so far, the crash review so far, and I don't think you want to start off with something like that either. These value for money quads are not the answer, and the FPV world will be completely misleading for you. The hype, unfortunately, is not the reality. Okay, so what is a beginner quad, I hear you ask? A good beginner quad should have the following attributes. It must be easy to fly in stable and horizon mode. It's perfect if you're new and entering the hobby for the first time. Affordable for what they offer as trainers in that market segment. You don't need the latest technology. You don't need to have an F4 flight board. You don't need powerful motors. That's completely irrelevant for learning. An F3 board is more than adequate. Low kV motors assist with longer flight times and less battery drain. Nothing higher than 2S in power, but as I said earlier, preferably 1S for affordability. Smaller power means lighter quads, less chance of injury and crash damage. Propeller guards or rings are a must. They help prevent propeller damage and injury. Stay away from performance. It's overwhelming and you only hit the ground harder, especially when you're learning. Contrary to popular belief, FPV is not visual line of sight. When you fly visual line of sight, you see the aircraft with your own eyes. You see how it banks, how it turns, how it climbs, how it falls. FPV is not that. You're viewing the whole experience as if you're the pilot. You don't know how high above the ground you are. You don't know how close to another person you are. Anyway, FPV in the beginning will set you back despite your previous flying experience. You will lose perspective and have to regain it all over again. I know I have, and I don't think I'm any different from a lot of people out there who are getting into the hobby or trying to get into the hobby. It will feel like starting from scratch all over again. You may need to spend more time in the workshop repairing again and again if you're not careful. The transition from visual line of sight to FPV is not as simple as it looks. Now we're all different, but for most of us, I'm telling you now, it's not as simple as it looks. Stability and predictability will be your best ally. A wingman is also highly recommended. What do I mean by a wingman? Someone by your side. Someone who can tell you where the quad is in case you're losing perspective while you've got the goggles on. It all helps, trust me. Now, let's clear up a few misconceptions. The best so-called labelled beginner quad for 2018 is not actually a beginner's quad. It breaks all the rules outlined in this presentation that would qualify it as a beginner's quad. If you're starting out, this quad and others like it are not for you yet. They're nice to have, but not for you yet. Even on 3S, these quads or this particular quad is highly agile for a learner to jump onto for the first time. The above should be a step up, not a starting point. It's easy to fall in love with this stuff, but if you get the wrong craft, the wrong quad, I'm telling you now, you're going to be on the ground, hitting the dirt quicker than you're flying. So my recommendations are as follows. Brushed or brushless for a start is not an issue here, it's a preference. Don't confuse the two. Try to start off with a bind and fly or a complete RTF system, which is a ready to fly system. You don't want to spend all that time building and soldering your pride and joy, which is quite possibly the wrong model for your personal flying ability when you're starting out, only to find that you crash more often than you fly. That's not fun. I can attest to that, and I'm sure there are many out there who can also attest to that as well. We're the quiet minority or the quiet majority. I don't know. We don't like to talk about the bad days. We all talk about the good days. Do you know how hard it is to find a crashed quad? Where do you start looking? I mean, when I lose perspective, I don't know where my quad is. After I land, or after I crash land, or after I hit the dirt, whatever you want to call it, I spend 10 minutes at least walking around in a circle trying to find where my quad is because I can't see it. Which direction was it in? Was it left? Was it right? Was it behind me? You think it's in one area and you walk there and it's not there. I'm telling you, trying to find your quad is as hard as learning to fly sometimes. And that's not funny because, you know, if you can't find it, someone else will. Practice on a sim. This will also help with perspective. Now, above all, keep on keeping on. This is what I call the next slide. Persist and persevere. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen. If you take any of this seriously, you can seriously minimize the headaches attached to FPV when you first start out. All that footage hype on YouTube is the best stuff, the highlights. Nobody usually talks about the pitfalls or shows you. I'm talking from experience. Maybe this is your experience too. Compete with yourself, not others. We all progress differently. And finally, thanks for watching once again. I'm Rick, this is Rick Chat RC, and this has been an FPV information presentation. I hope you liked it. I hope it helps some of you or most of you. Please give me the thumbs up if you like what you see. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to support or help support the channel. I'm looking forward to some feedback. Don't forget to leave some comments, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye for now.